I've got some really weird questions that I don't understand how this is compatible with some of the EU Constitution and Charter of Human Rights. But um, what exactly do you want to lay out the what exactly is in the law that is concerning to yourself and to others who have been looking at this?
Sure. So we're looking at free speech first of all, and what free speech is as a concept. And we have, I'm glad you brought up the European Charter of Human Rights there, because we've got two angles on this as a piece of legislation. We firstly got the Irish Constitution and free speech as it's codified under Article 40.6 of the Irish Constitution. We also have the European Charter of Human Rights, Article 11, I believe.
Yeah.
So we have all of these lovely governing principles, but when you actually look at what is specifically written in those constitutional documents, it is not absolute free speech, it's qualified free speech. What does that mean? It means it's free speech, but to a point. If you look at the Irish Constitution, it will tell you that it's freedom of expression and that's protected, but to the point that public order and morality are maintained. So it is not an absolute right. There are restrictions that exists on the books here, and also you'll see if you look at the European Charter of Human Rights that it's actually a similar restriction. Now, that can be for a lot of public good. We don't have absolute speech on the books in Ireland in our laws, not just our constitution. We have the 1989 Prohibition of Incitement to Hatred Act 1989. You've got similar legislation in the UK. There's similar legislation all over the world. It's so that people can't go out in the street tomorrow and name a particular group and say that everyone should go ahead and kill them, because inciting that kind of genocidal, dangerous, sentiment can lead to a lot of terrible, like that, public unrest, disorder, danger, lack of order, chaotic levels of things that would rival any 20th century genocide. So that is important. That is to protect people because we want to live in a safe society. But what we are talking about here is not that kind of a situation. We're looking at repealing this 1989 Act, which it's fit for purpose. If someone in Ireland right now decides to, let's say, name an ethnic group and try to get them killed by inciting a group to do so, they'll be charged under that legislation. And I don't think anyone in the public space is going to have an issue with that. They're going to try and stop someone calling for that sort of violence. But that's about violence. That's about threats to people's lives. It's about someone's personal physical safety. We're just now getting to change what this concept of safety really is. And so that's what this bill from 2022, it's the Incitement of Violence or Hatred and Hate Offences Bill. This is now changing all of these definitions, this idea of hatred and safety. It's a very different concept to your physical safety being in danger, and it's conflating the idea of being offended or hearing things, having interactions that you don't like, and you're feeling unsafe because someone has an opinion about something or about you that you don't particularly like. So look, what do we mean by that? Well, this legislation has a couple of protected categories, including but not limited to race, colour, nationality, ethnic origin, religion, gender, sex characteristics, sexual orientation, disability. So that is sort of a plethora of things that, neatly fit into the identity politics that we're seeing in this time. So that's not a coincidence that these are sort of the additions to what is missing from the old act. This is neatly fitting into that. This is clearly what they're trying to do. They're trying to add these categories for the purposes of protection to incitement to violence. I don't think there's any issue there. But we're now seeing it go far beyond incitement to violence. A lot of this is about the perception that the individual has that they are being mistreated. And this goes all the way to speech now. This is about online content, a meme that you might share of something like Pepe the Frog. That is now being conflated with something that was a concept that was designed to stop people from genociding each other. Yeah. So we've come a long way to the point that we're trying to stop people from getting killed, and now we're just trying to kill humor. that's how dangerous it is. And that's not an exaggeration by any means. The situation's that dire, and we have to really ask ourselves, why is something like a meme being subject to this sort of treatment? We can get into that if you like.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. Do you know what's really, really interesting, right? Is what
Mm-hmm.
articles that I can find on this, right, that
Mm-hmm.
mention the this the part about possessing material that might be considered hateful.
Mm-hmm.
So the Irish Times article does have it. It talks about Paul Murphy, TD from People Before Profit, and I saw actually maybe we could play his. Is this his? No, that's Ronan Mullen. Maybe we could play this. Actually, I'm going to share this with you, um, because it's then the Yahoo article doesn't mention a thing about that. It talks about, the incitement of violence, the need to update, so the updates to the old legislation. It talks about how people fear that this will be used to, clamp down on free speech. But there's nothing about the specific. Oh no, hang on, maybe I'm. No, yeah, they don't really talk about the fact that you can be, criminal. You could be theoretically criminalized for possessing a meme. That's not really mentioned in here. Funny enough.
Right.
Uh,
Well, yeah. I could direct you to Section 10, Part 1A, and it says that a person, sorry, subject to subscriptions under various sections, a person shall be guilty of an offence if the person prepares or possesses material that is likely to incite violence or hatred against a person or group of persons on account of the protected characteristics, with a view to the material being communicated to the public, whether by himself or herself, or another person, and the person shall be presumed, until contrary is proven, to have been in possession of material in contravention to that subsection. So what does all that legalese mean? If you go back up to the top of Section 10 there, I've just sort of skimmed part of it. They're basically saying that if you are likely to incite hatred against a group, and you may have a view of communicating it to the public, you may or may not be doing so, that you could be making a comment about sex characteristics. I think that's the topic of the day. You are now subject to conviction under this legislation. So we can see activists like Kelly J. Keane talking about her concern around transgender people in bathrooms. That's a particular concern. That's a legitimate concern for anyone to have a free and open discussion about. But if lobby groups and all these other interests that are very well, in particularly in Ireland, very well funded through the non-governmental sector, which is being paid for by taxpayer money, these institutions are now carrying this enormous amount of wealth and clout, and have the ability to lobby for this kind of legislation. They've also played a hand in making sure that the characteristics that are in this bill pertain to them as well. It's one thing, again, I think it's worth mentioning, violence is one aspect, but the idea that someone will dislike you or disagree with you or not think that your classification as a a transgender person means that we can't have a discussion about what you should or shouldn't be able to do in the broader conventions of society. I mean, that's absolutely terrifying. That's what this legislation is aimed at doing. I mean, the thing is, in some senses, as draconian as this law is, it's arguably a lot more dangerous in the UK, because you've had people who've been visited, including Kelly J. Keane, by the police over tweets. I went to a rally where an English woman living in Northern Ireland was visited by UK police because a transgender male on Twitter had a scrap with her, online scrap. And this is the difference. We're conflating physical violence with online interaction of people who disagree with each other. This particular woman was a lesbian. She's a mother, and she was talking about childhood sexual abuse that she had herself been subject to. So she's extremely protective of her children in public spaces like bathrooms, and she's also concerned about men who are transsexual having free entry into that space, because anyone with any common sense knows that someone who is maybe not transsexual but predatorily minded will absolutely take advantage of that law in order to access spaces that we know and have an unwritten rule around are spaces for children. And that's women's bathrooms is one of those spaces. So these are conversations we have to be able to permit in our society. And we're not even going to get the chance to defend those positions.
Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.